Pay attention to the woman stepping out of the white bridal car outside the Burj Al Arab at 8:47 p.m. Her name is Camille de Cruz. She is 26 years old. Pediatric nurse from Cebu City. She has a rosary her mother pressed into her hands at the airport 3 years ago, and tonight, a wedding ring worth $340,000 on her left hand. She is marrying Sheikh Faris al-Rashidi. Oil money, real estate, a man worth $800 million who told her, on their 4th date, that she was the most honest woman he had ever met. She is smiling for the cameras outside the hotel entrance. Her dress catches the light. She has no idea that at this exact moment, 3 floors above her in the bridal suite, a phone is sitting face down on a white duvet. It has been buzzing for 11 minutes. Nobody is in the room yet to read it. Nobody has seen the message. Nobody has opened the video. In 4 hours, Camille de Cruz will be dead. And the investigation that follows will ask one question that nobody in that glittering ballroom is prepared to answer. Who loaded the weapon, and who pulled the trigger? The alarm goes off at 5:50 a.m. in a 3rd-floor dormitory room in Al Quoz, Dubai. Not the kind of alarm that announces a wedding day in films. No music, no sunlight flooding through curtains. Fluorescent corridor lighting seeps under the door. A shared bathroom down the hall. Someone's laundry hanging from the window grill because the dryer on this floor has been broken for 6 weeks and 3 maintenance requests have produced nothing. This is where Camille de Cruz has lived for the past 3 years. Room 14B. A single bed, a small wooden dresser, a Virgin Mary figurine her mother packed in her luggage the day she left Cebu. On the dresser beside the figurine is a framed photograph. A teenage boy in a school uniform, grinning so wide his eyes have nearly disappeared. His name is Nico. He is 14 years old. He is her younger brother. Every Friday evening, without exception, Camille video calls him from this room. She sits on the edge of this bed, holds her phone with both hands, and watches his face appear on the screen. He always answers on the 2nd ring. He always looks like he has been waiting. Camille de Cruz was born in Barangay Guadalupe, Cebu City, the eldest of 4 children. Her father drove a tricycle for hire. Her mother cleaned houses for a family in a nearby subdivision 3 days a week. They were not destitute, but they were the kind of poor that requires constant management. Every peso accounted for, every expense weighed against 3 others. Camille understood this before she was 10. She was the kind of child who noticed when her mother skipped breakfast and claimed she wasn't hungry. When she was 17, she told her parents she wanted to be a nurse. Her father said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, "That is expensive." Camille said, "I know. I'll figure it out." She worked at a call center from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3 nights a week throughout nursing school. She graduated on a Thursday. She passed her board exams the following April. She arrived in Dubai on a work visa 8 months after that, employed by St. Raphael Private Hospital as a pediatric ward nurse. Salary AED 7,200 per month. She sent $800 home every month without fail. Nico's school fees. Her mother's hypertension medication. A sibling's dental surgery the year before last. All of it held together by wire transfers and 5:50 a.m. alarms in a room with broken dryer laundry hanging from the window. This is the woman Sheikh Faris al-Rashidi fell in love with. And it is important to understand that before everything else. Before the wedding, before the video, before the suite on the 47th floor. This is who she was. A woman holding 2 worlds together with both hands, hoping neither would fall. Faris al-Rashidi is 38 years old. 3rd son of a prominent Emirati family. Not the heir, that is his oldest brother Zayed, but exceptionally wealthy in his own right through a property development company. He built from a modest inheritance into something worth several $100 million over 15 years of deliberate, careful work. He has been married once before. A marriage arranged when he was 24, to a woman from a family his parents approved of entirely. It lasted 3 years. No children. The divorce was handled quietly and with mutual respect, which is sometimes the saddest way a marriage can end. He spent 6 years afterward building his business and occasionally attending dinners where someone's mother or aunt had seated an eligible woman beside him. Nothing took. He had largely stopped expecting it to. He met Camille 8 months ago when his mother was admitted to St. Raphael Hospital for cardiac monitoring. Nothing life-threatening. A precautionary measure after she mentioned chest tightness to her physician. Camille was assigned to her ward. She was professional and unhurried. She remembered his mother's name without checking the chart after the first day. She explained procedures in plain language without condescension. She brought an extra pillow without being asked. Ferris visited his mother every evening for 5 days. On the third evening, his mother told him, "That nurse is a good person. You can tell." He had already noticed. On the 5th evening, as his mother was being discharged, Camille was completing the paperwork at the ward desk. Ferris stopped beside her. He said simply, "My mother says you are the best nurse she has ever had." Camille looked up. She said equally simply, "She was a wonderful patient. Tell her we'll miss her." Ferris walked to the elevator. He pressed the button. Then he turned around and went back to the ward desk and asked Camille if she would have coffee with him sometime. She looked at him for a moment. She said, "Let me give you my number." He kept every message she ever sent him. This is his humanizing detail. Not the cars, not the business, not the family name. The fact that a man who could have anything kept a woman's text messages from the beginning because he was afraid she might one day be a person he used to know. 8 months of dinners. Of long conversations in the lobby of her hospital after her evening shifts ended. Of her learning what made him laugh genuinely, not politely. Of him learning that she video called her brother every Friday without fail, and that if he wanted to reach her on a Friday evening, he should wait until 8:30 p.m. because she would not cut Nico short for anyone. He did not ask her to. He thought this was one of the best things he had ever learned about a person. He proposed 3 months ago, in the lobby of the same hotel where they are getting married tonight, at the table where they had their second date. She said yes before he finished the sentence. Now, there is a man in Cebu City, Philippines, who has been sitting in front of a laptop for 2 hours. His name is Marco Villanueva. He is 29 years old. He works at a shipping company. He dated Camille dela Cruz for 2 years before she left for Dubai. 2 years of being good together, of thinking this was permanent, of making the specific kind of plans that young people make when they believe the future is cooperative. Then she left. Then the distance did what distance does. He waited. She called less. The calls became shorter. Then one evening she called and told him, gently and carefully, that she thought they should stop trying. He did not handle it well. He handled it the way people handle things they never consented to losing. He found her on Instagram 6 months ago. He watched the photographs appear. Dinners. A man. More dinners. A man who was clearly significant. Then 3 weeks ago, an engagement announcement. Then last night, wedding photographs. Camille in ivory silk. Camille smiling at a man who is not him in front of a hotel that costs more per night than Marco earns in 3 months. Marco Villanueva opens a folder on his hard drive. He has had it for 18 months. He has opened it before. He has never done anything with it. He looks at its contents for a long time. He looks at the wedding photographs on Instagram again. He finds, through a mutual connection's publicly shared event invitation, a phone number. He stares at the screen. His hands are very still. Then he attaches the file. He writes 8 words. He presses send at 6:47 p.m. Dubai time. The message travels 5,000 kilometers in under a second. It lands in a phone notification on a white duvet in a suite on the 47th floor of the Burj Al Arab. The phone buzzes once, twice, goes still. Downstairs, in a ballroom with 300 guests and white roses and champagne that costs more per bottle than Camille's monthly salary. The woman who is about to become a wife has no idea. She is laughing at something her colleague just said. She is holding a bouquet of sampaguita and jasmine. She requested them specifically because they smell like home. She is 26 years old and she is genuinely, completely happy. The phone on the 47th floor sits face down on the duvet. Unread. Waiting. The ceremony begins in 13 minutes. The ballroom of the Burj Al Arab at 7 p.m. is the kind of room that makes people forget themselves slightly. The scale of it, the light, the particular quality of a space designed to make everything feel significant. 300 guests arranged in gilded chairs. A string quartet playing something classical and unhurried. The air carrying white rose and oud. Ferris stands at the front in a white kandura, his hands clasped in front of him, watching the entrance with the expression of a man who has stopped trying to appear composed. His older brother Tariq stands beside him. 20 minutes earlier, in the anteroom, Tariq had placed a hand on Ferris's shoulder and said, quietly, "You are certain about this woman? You know nothing of her life before she came here." Ferris had looked at his brother evenly. He said, "I know everything I need to know." Tariq said nothing more. He straightened his bisht and followed Ferris into the ballroom. At 7:04 p.m., the doors at the far end open. Camille dela Cruz walks through them alone, because her family is in Cebu and she had no one to walk her down the aisle, and she told Ferris she would rather walk herself than have a stand-in. He had said, of course. She walks the length of the ballroom in ivory silk with sampaguita in her hands and 300 people watching. Halfway down the aisle she finds Ferris's face. He is not composed at all. She smiles. He smiles. Later, two of the guests independently tell the same story. That watching that moment felt like witnessing something private. Like the rest of the room had temporarily ceased to exist for two people. At 7:22 p.m., during the signing of documents, Camille excuses herself for 90 seconds to make a call on a borrowed phone. Her own phone is in her bridal bag in the anteroom. She steps into a small alcove near the entrance doors. She calls Cebu. Nico answers on the second ring. There is noise in the background, her mother, her siblings, the television. She whispers in Cebuano so the guests nearby won't hear. She says, "I wish you were here, Nico." He says, "Kuya Camille, are you happy?" She pauses for a moment, not because she is uncertain, because she wants to answer it properly, the way it deserves. She says, "Yes, I really am." Nico says, "Then I'm happy too." She hangs up. She straightens her dress. She walks back into the ballroom. She does not know it is the last call she will ever make to her brother. Ferris's phone is on the head table, face down. He placed it there when he took his seat for the reception. A deliberate gesture, a signal to himself and anyone watching that tonight he is not a businessman. Not the third son with a portfolio of properties to manage. Tonight he is a husband. The phone buzzes at 7:34 p.m. He does not look at it. It buzzes again at 7:41 p.m. He reaches for it without looking, turns the screen brightness down through the case button, sets it back down. He does not turn it over. At 10:15 p.m., during the final stretch of the reception, Ferris's younger cousin Reem is clearing small items from the head table in preparation for the cake presentation. She is efficient and quiet, the way people are when they work events in families like this. She picks up Ferris's phone to move it aside. The screen illuminates with the physical contact. A notification preview at the top. She sees it, not the whole thing. The sender name is a string of digits, unknown. The preview text reads, "Your wife is not who you." The message is cut off by the character limit. Reem holds the phone for 1 moment, 2 moments. She looks toward the dance floor. Ferris and Camille are just stepping onto it. Camille is laughing at something. Ferris has his hand at the small of her back. Reem sets the phone face down on the table. She moves the champagne glasses. She walks away. The notification sits unread for 22 more minutes. The string quartet begins to play. At 10:47 p.m., the couple are escorted to the 47th floor. Hotel staff have prepared the suite with the particular kind of deliberate beauty that only exists in places built to make memories. White roses in tall vases, champagne on ice. The Dubai skyline spread out through floor-to-ceiling glass like a second world. Camille stands at the window for a moment. She looks at the lights below. She says quietly, not to anyone in particular, "I can't believe this is real." Ferris comes to stand beside her. He says, "It is." She turns and looks at him. She says she wants to change. She takes her bag into the bathroom. She closes the door. Ferris sits on the edge of the bed. He exhales slowly. He reaches into his jacket pocket. He takes out his phone. He looks at it for the first time since the ceremony. He sees the notification. Unknown number. A video file. 8 words. Your wife is not who you think she is. He opens it. The video is 47 seconds long. It is clearly private footage, not professional, not staged, not intended to be seen by anyone outside the moment it was made. Camille's face is visible and unmistakable. The man beside her is younger, early to mid-20s, dark-haired. The timestamp in the corner reads 18 months ago. The message beneath the video attachment reads, "She sent this to her boyfriend while she was already with you. Ask her about Marco Villanueva." Ferris watches it once. He sits very still. He watches it again. His breathing has changed, not faster but shallower, the way breathing changes when the body is trying to process something the mind is refusing to fully accept. He opens Instagram. He types the name Marco Villanueva. The profile is public. He scrolls. There are photographs, some years old, some recent. In the older ones, Camille appears, smiling, leaning against this man in the way people lean against people they have known a long time. Ferris checks the timestamp on the video against what he knows. They were already together. He was already falling in love with her. He was already keeping her messages because he was afraid. She might one day become someone he used to know. And this video existed while all of that was happening. The champagne glass is on the floor. He doesn't remember putting it there. He doesn't remember standing. He is standing. The bathroom door opens at 11:17 p.m. Camille steps out. She is smiling. A specific kind of smile, quiet and warm. The smile of someone who has been happy all day and has finally arrived at the part they were looking forward to most. She says softly, "I'm sorry I took so long. I wanted tonight to be..." She stops. She looks at his face. The smile disappears. She has known this man for 8 months. She has learned what his composed face looks like and what his actually fine face looks like and what his working through something face looks like. She has never seen this face before. This face is pale and very still and looking at her with something she cannot immediately name, something that has not arrived yet at an expression because it is still deciding what it is. Ferris holds up the phone. He turns the screen toward her. He does not say anything. He watches her face. She recognizes it in under 2 seconds. The rosary in her bridal bag on the table. Nico answering on the second ring. "Are you happy?" "Yes, I really am. 3,000 guests and a ballroom in Sampaguita and the Dubai skyline and a ring worth more than everything her father ever earned in his life. And all of it narrowing now, in this room, to the 47 seconds on that screen and the name Marco Villanueva and a man on the edge of a bed who is no longer the person she married 4 hours ago." Her hand goes to her mouth. Her knees soften. Ferris says, in a voice that is completely, terrifyingly calm, "Who is Marco Villanueva?" She doesn't answer immediately. This is not evasion. It is the particular paralysis of someone who has been carrying a manageable weight for a long time and has just watched it become unmanageable in the space of a single second. Camille Dela Cruz stands in the doorway of the bathroom in the suite that costs $11,000 per night, in a city that was supposed to be her future, and she looks at the phone in her husband's hand, and every carefully constructed separation between her past and her present. The one she has maintained for 18 months with discipline and deliberate silence, and a single phone call to a man in Cebu asking him to delete a file, collapses completely, not gradually, all at once, the way a structure doesn't lean before it falls. Ferris asks again. His voice has not changed, still calm, still quiet. The particular quiet of something that has moved past the point where volume is necessary. "Who is Marco Villanueva?" Camille says, "Someone I used to know." Ferris says, "That is not an answer." She crosses the room slowly. She reaches for the phone. He does not give it to her. She stops. She says, "Ferris, please let me explain this." Her voice is steady but her hands are not. They are clasped in front of her the same way they were clasped around the Sampaguita bouquet 4 hours ago in the ballroom, except the flowers are gone now and she has nothing to hold. "He was my ex-boyfriend," she says. "Before Dubai. Before you. We were together for 2 years and then I came here and the relationship ended." That video, she stops. She makes herself continue. "That video was a mistake. I sent it during a bad week. I was lonely and I thought we were going to try to make things work long distance and I regretted it immediately. I called him and asked him to delete it. He told me he had." She looks at Ferris directly. Every word she is saying is true. She is not constructing a story. She is not managing a version of events. She is telling him with complete accuracy what happened. That the video was old. That the relationship was over. That she has not spoken to Marco Villanueva in 16 months. That she has not been unfaithful to Ferris in any form, at any point, in any way. Ferris listens. His expression does not change. He says, "You kept this from me." She says, "It was in the past. It had nothing to do with us." He says, "You let me believe you were." She says, "I never told you I had no past. I never told you that. You never asked and I didn't volunteer it because it was over and it didn't matter." He says, "It matters now." This is the thing about that room in that moment that the investigation would later spend considerable effort trying to reconstruct and understand. Camille Dela Cruz was not lying. She had not been unfaithful. She had made a private decision 18 months ago that she was not proud of, had asked for it to be erased, had moved forward, had built something genuine with this man over 8 months of real dinners and real conversations and real Friday evenings, waiting until 8:30 so she could finish her call with Nico before she called him back. She had done what people do. She had kept her past in the past and tried to build a future. This is not deception. It is the ordinary human negotiation between who you were and who you are trying to become. And none of it made any difference in Suite 4704 at 11:19 p.m. because the man sitting on the edge of the bed was not hearing what she was saying. He was hearing something else entirely. He was hearing dishonor. He was hearing humiliation. He was hearing 300 guests in a ballroom and his brother Tariq's hand on his shoulder. "You are certain about this woman?" And his mother's cardiac ward and the table at the hotel where he proposed and 8 months of kept messages and a woman who walked herself down the aisle because she had no one to walk with her and he had thought this was brave. He had thought this was one of the finest things about her, and now that same aloneness felt like concealment, felt like a performance, felt like something he had been made a fool of by. This is not a defense of what he does next. It is an explanation of the specific architecture of a man's collapse. How quickly love can curdle when it encounters something it cannot metabolize. At 11:21 p.m., he stands up. Camille takes a step back. She does not know yet that she should take more steps. She does not know that she should leave the room. She does not know that the correct decision in this moment is to open the suite door and walk into the corridor and press the elevator button and put as much distance as possible between herself and a man she has just watched become someone she doesn't recognize. She stays because she still believes this is a conversation. She stays because she has been honest and she believes, in the particular way that honest people believe things, that honesty is sufficient. That if she can make him understand the truth clearly enough, the truth will protect her. He puts his hand around her throat at 11:23 p.m. She claws at his hands. This detail will matter later. It will matter in a courtroom, in a forensic report, in the testimony of a pathologist who will explain to a judge what the skin cells under her fingernails mean about her final minutes. It means she fought. It means she was present and conscious and trying to survive until the last possible moment. It means she did not accept this. It means that whatever composure she maintained during the confrontation, whatever stillness she held while she tried to reach him, abandoned her completely when she understood what was happening, and she fought with everything she had. Her last words, reconstructed later through the suite's automated acoustic monitoring system, are his name. She says it 4 times. Not as a plea exactly, as something more precise than a plea, as a final attempt to remind him who he is. Camille Dela Cruz dies at 11:26 p.m. on the 47th floor of the Burj Al Arab. She is 26 years old. She has $112 in her personal bank account, a brother who answers on the second ring, a mother who plants sampaguita on the first of every month, and a rosary in a bridal bag on the table 6 feet from where she falls. She has done nothing tonight, nothing, that deserved this room, this ending, this man's hands. Faris al-Rashidi stands in the center of the suite at 11:27 p.m. and looks at what he has done. The champagne is still on ice. The white roses are still in their vases. The Dubai skyline still stretches through the floor-to-ceiling glass, indifferent and glittering. He stands there for 4 minutes without moving. Then he calls his brother. Tariq arrives at 11:52 p.m. with 2 men. The investigation will later identify them through hotel CCTV, associates of the family, names that will appear in the subsequent obstruction charges. They assess the room with the rapid, practical efficiency of people who are accustomed to managing problems on behalf of men who have the resources to make problems disappear. Tariq makes 3 decisions in quick succession: the window, the note, the positioning. The suicide note is copied from a fragment of Camille's handwriting found in her bridal bag, a small card she had written to Ferris for their wedding night, 3 sentences about hope and the future. Tariq traces the letter forms in ballpoint pen onto hotel stationery. He keeps it short because short notes are harder to forensically analyze. The window is opened. The positioning is deliberate. At 12:09 a.m., Camille Dela Cruz goes over the balcony of Suite 4704. 47 floors. The investigation will later establish, through biomechanical analysis and the pattern of the fall, that her body was already without life before it reached the pavement. She did not fall as a living person falls. This will matter in court. This detail, clinical, precise, devastating, will be the one that makes the jury understand, completely and without ambiguity, what happened in that suite. Tariq and the 2 men leave. Ferris is seated on the couch. His lawyer has been called. He has been instructed to say nothing beyond grief. He is 38 years old and he is sitting in a room full of white roses and he is thinking, for the first time since 10:51 p.m., with something approaching clarity. And what he is thinking is this: that the video was sent by a man in Cebu City who knew exactly what he was doing, who knew what kind of man Ferris was, who chose the wedding night specifically and deliberately because he wanted the damage to be permanent. Ferris's phone buzzes at 12:17 a.m., a final message from the same unknown number. For words, she deserved it. Goodbye. Dubai police arrive at 12:31 a.m. They see a woman on the pavement. They see a note. They begin, initially, to process a suicide. Patrol Officer Hassan Samir has been with Dubai Police for 6 years. Before his current posting, he spent 2 years in the Forensic Support Unit, cataloging evidence and learning, in the methodical and unglamorous way that real forensic knowledge is acquired, how physical spaces tell stories. He is 31 years old. He arrived at the Burj Al Arab at 12:31 a.m. as part of the first response unit. He walked the pavement. He noted the position of the body. Then he went upstairs to Suite 4704 and he stood in the center of the room and he looked at it for a long time without touching anything. The champagne glass is on the floor near the bed. The shards are distributed in a pattern that indicates it fell or was thrown before the window was opened. The trajectory of the larger fragments points away from the balcony, toward the bathroom door. A woman moving in crisis toward a window does not stop to break a champagne glass on the wrong side of the room first. The rose arrangements near the balcony entrance are undisturbed. The table they sit on has not been moved. If a woman in genuine distress crossed this room in her final minutes, she did not brush against that table. The roses are too still. The room is too arranged. It has been managed. He looks at the note. Hotel stationery. Ballpoint pen. The letter forms are consistent in pressure and angle in a way that handwriting under extreme emotional duress almost never is. When people write in crisis, they press harder in some places, lighter in others. The pen shakes. The baseline of the letters drifts. This note is even. This note was copied by someone who was calm. Hassan radios his supervisor at 12:43 a.m. He says, "I want CID here before we move anything." His supervisor asks why. Hassan says, "Because this is not what it looks like." That radio call is logged at 12:43 a.m. It is the reason Camille Dela Cruz gets a detective instead of a case file. Detective Layla Noor arrives at 1:15 a.m. She is 41 years old. 14 years with Dubai Police, the last 6 in homicide. She keeps a worn photograph of her late father, also a policeman, folded inside her badge holder. He died when she was 22. He told her once, when she was still a teenager asking questions about his work, "The dead cannot speak, so you must speak for them." She has carried this as a professional obligation ever since, which means she does not walk crime scenes quickly, and she does not accept the first version of events she is offered, and she has closed 34 of the 37 homicide cases assigned to her in 6 years. She walks into Suite 4704 at 1:15 a.m. and she does not touch anything for 13 minutes. She simply looks. She identifies the same inconsistencies Hassan noted, and 3 more. The positioning of Camille's bridal bag. Still on the table, closed, clasp fastened. A woman who walked to a balcony in the final minutes of her life did not stop to close and clasp her bag. The bathroom mirror. A handprint on the lower left corner, smeared downward. Someone steadied themselves against that mirror. The height of the print is consistent with a person being pushed backward rather than a person leaning forward. And the window itself. The latch mechanism shows faint smearing on the interior handle, not fingerprints, but the kind of smeared surface that results from someone wiping a surface clean while wearing gloves. The suite has been processed, partially, in a hurry, by someone who knew enough to think about fingerprints but not enough to think about everything else. Layla says to Hassan, "Good call." He nods once. They begin. The autopsy is conducted by Dr. Youssef Al-Marzuki at Dubai Forensic Medical Center at 6 a.m. He is the chief forensic pathologist, 22 years in the role. He is precise and unhurried, and he does not speculate beyond what the evidence supports. His report, delivered verbally to Layla at 8:47 a.m. and formally submitted at noon, is unambiguous on 4 points. First, manual strangulation. The bruising on the neck is bilateral and symmetrical, consistent with 2 hands applied with sustained force. Second, death occurred between 11:15 and 11:45 p.m., before the fall. The specific physiological markers of postmortem versus antemortem impact are distinct, and the body shows the former. She did not die from the fall. Third, defensive wounds on both hands and forearms, consistent with a person attempting to remove hands from their throat. She fought. Fourth, skin cells beneath the fingernails of both hands. Male DNA, swabbed and submitted for comparison. Results expected within 48 hours. Layla notes this final point in her case file with a single additional sentence. She was alive when she realized what was happening, and she tried to survive. This sentence is not required by the report. She writes it anyway. She writes it because her father told her the dead cannot speak, and this is her speaking for Camille dela Cruz, and she wants the record to be clear on the fact that this woman did not accept her ending quietly. The warrant for Faris's phone is obtained through emergency judiciary order at 4:30 a.m. Dubai law permits expedited warrants in active homicide investigations where evidence may be at risk of destruction. The phone is surrendered by Faris's lawyer at 6:15 a.m., under explicit legal instruction that resistance will compound the obstruction charges already being considered. Digital forensics analyst Farida Okafor begins extraction immediately. She works for 9 hours. She recovers the deleted video, the deleted messages, the original unknown sender number, and a secondary deletion. A message sent to that same number at 12:17 a.m. from Faris's phone. For words, "It is done." Layla reads this at 3:30 p.m. She sits with it for a moment. Then she writes in her case file, "He contacted the sender after her death. He wanted the sender to know." She underlines this, because it does something important to the case. It establishes that Faris, in the aftermath of murdering his wife, reached out not to emergency services, not to his lawyer, not to express remorse or confusion. He reached out to the person who sent the video. He wanted to report a completion. This is not a man who acted in temporary madness. This is a man who acted and then communicated the result. The unknown sender number traces to a prepaid SIM card purchased in Cebu City, Philippines, 7 days before the wedding. Layla contacts the Philippine National Police through the Interpol liaison desk at 9 a.m. She speaks with Detective Ernesto Cabral in Manila. She gives him the number, the name Marco Villanueva extracted from the digital forensics, and the timing, message sent at 6:47 p.m. Dubai time, which is 2:47 a.m. Philippine time. Cabral writes this down. He says, he was awake at 2:47 in the morning. He sent this deliberately. Layla says, yes. Cabral says, I'll go to him this morning. Marco Villanueva does not run. This is the first thing Cabral notes when he arrives at Marco's apartment in Cebu City at 9:30 a.m. The door is answered quickly. Marco is dressed. He looks like a man who has not slept, which he hasn't. He looks like a man who has been waiting for this knock, which he has, Cabral shows his identification. He says, "I need to ask you about a message you sent to a phone number in Dubai at 2:47 this morning." Marco steps back from the doorway. He says, "Come in." He sits at his kitchen table. He does not ask for a lawyer. He does not deny anything. He cries quietly and continuously throughout the entire interview, in the way a person cries when the thing they have done has already become real to them and they are no longer capable of pretending otherwise. He tells Cabral everything. The relationship, the video, the request to delete it, the lie, the Instagram, the wedding photographs, the 3 weeks of deciding, the deliberate choice of the wedding night. Yes, deliberate, he says. He wanted it to land at the worst possible moment. He wanted the damage to be total. He wanted Ferris to be humiliated the way Marco had felt humiliated, watching the woman he loved marry someone else from 5,000 kilometers away. He says, "I wanted him to leave her. I wanted her to lose everything there and come home." Cabral asks, "Did you think he might hurt her?" Marco is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "I didn't know him. I didn't know what he would do." Cabral writes this down. Then he asks the question that will later be repeated by a prosecutor in a courtroom. "But you sent it anyway?" Marco does not answer. He doesn't need to. The answer is in every file on that hard drive, in the prepaid SIM purchased 7 days before the wedding, in the deliberate selection of the wedding night as the moment of maximum impact. Marco Villanueva is 29 years old, and he sent a weapon to a man he knew nothing about, and a woman he claimed to love is dead. Cabral calls Layla at 11:15 a.m. He says he's confessing. Full statement. He knew about the marriage. He chose the timing intentionally. She says, "Hold him. I'm filing the extradition request this afternoon." At 3:15 p.m., Layla Noor enters the formal interview room where Sheikh Faris al-Rashidi has been sitting with his lawyer for 2 hours. She places a single photograph on the table between them. A still image extracted from the hotel corridor CCTV showing Tariq and 2 men arriving at Suite 4704 at 11:52 p.m., 26 minutes after the death established by the autopsy. She places a second photograph, the smeared latch on the balcony window. A third, the forensic comparison of the suicide note's letter forms against Camille's handwriting sample from the wedding card. She says nothing. She lets him look. His lawyer leans in and whispers something. Ferris does not respond. He is looking at the photographs. Then Layla places the last document on the table. The DNA comparison results, just received, 99.98% match between the skin cells under Camille Dela Cruz's fingernails and the buccal swab taken from Faris al-Rashidi at 7 a.m. that morning. She says, "She fought." He still says nothing. His lawyer says, "My client is not answering questions at this time." Layla says, "That's fine." She collects her photographs. She stands. She says at the door, without turning around, "Your brother's fingerprints are on the window latch, the balcony railing, and the pen that wrote the note." She leaves. Faris al-Rashidi is formally arrested at 3:47 p.m. His family releases a statement at 4:30 p.m. citing medical distress. Layla is in her car when she reads it on her phone. She sets the phone face down on the passenger seat. She sits for a moment. She thinks about a woman who walked herself down an aisle because she had no one to walk with her, and a man who kept that woman's text messages because he was afraid she might become someone he used to know, and 47 seconds of video that traveled 5,000 kilometers in the dark and ended everything. Then she starts the car. There is still a great deal of work to do. There is a case room on the 3rd floor of Dubai Criminal Investigation Department headquarters that Layla Noor has occupied for 4 consecutive days by the time she sits down on the evening of day 4 and looks at everything spread across the tables and pinned to the boards and asks herself the question she has been circling since the beginning. Not who killed Camille Dela Cruz, that answer is already in the DNA report, in the acoustic data, in the skin cells under a dead woman's fingernails. Not who sent the video, that answer is in Cebu City, sitting across a table from Ernesto Cabral, crying without stopping. The question Layla is asking is different. It is the question that does not appear anywhere in the formal case documents, the question that has no box to be checked in the official reporting structure, but which is the question that matters most if you believe, as Layla's father taught her to believe, that justice is not only about punishing the people who did the thing but about understanding what the thing actually was. The question is, Who was Camille dela Cruz? Really? And what was she trying to do? The investigation into Camille's background is thorough and specific, the way Layla does everything. She pulls the employment records from St. Raphael Hospital first. 3 years of service. Performance reviews, consistently excellent. Colleagues interviewed, uniformly consistent in their descriptions. She was meticulous with the children. She remembered their names and their preferred television programs and which ones were afraid of needles and which ones needed their parents to hold their hand during blood draws. She worked overtime without complaint during staffing shortages. She was twice nominated for an Internal Staff Recognition Award. She won once. The certificate is framed in room 14B in the Alquaz dormitory, which the investigation has sealed pending the completion of the case. It hangs above the dresser with the Virgin Mary figurine. Below it, on the dresser surface, is the framed photograph of Nico in his school uniform, grinning so wide his eyes have disappeared. Layla pulls Camille's bank records next. 3 years of monthly transactions. The same outgoing transfer on the 5th of every month without exception. $800. Sent to a family account in Cebu City. The investigation verifies the recipient account. Registered to Rosa dela Cruz, Camille's mother, Barangay Guadalupe, Cebu City. Layla cross-references the transfers against the dela Cruz family's documented expenses during the same 3-year period. Nico's school fees, covered. Rosa dela Cruz's hypertension medication, covered. A hospitalization for Camille's youngest sibling in the 2nd year, covered. A dental procedure for another sibling, covered. The total transferred over 3 years is just under $30,000. It is every discretionary peso Camille dela Cruz earned above her basic living costs in a city where her basic living costs were already consuming most of what she made. She did not spend it on herself. She spent it on the family she left in order to be able to afford to keep them. Layla sits with this for a long time. She thinks about a woman living in a dormitory room on a nursing salary, sending $800 home every month, putting her brother through school from 5,000 kilometers away, calling him every Friday without fail at 8:30 p.m. because she would not cut the call short for anyone. She thinks about Camille standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of the most expensive suite in Dubai looking at the skyline and saying, "I can't believe this is real." And she thinks about what real meant to Camille dela Cruz in that moment. Not the suite, not the ring, not the money. The fact that she had built something genuine with a person who valued her for exactly who she was. That after 3 years of fluorescent corridors and borrowed dryers and sending everything home and being relentlessly, quietly responsible, something had arrived that was just for her. The personal history investigation reaches Marco Villanueva through Cabral's detailed reporting from Manila. Layla reads the transcripts of his interview 3 times. She marks 3 passages and sets them aside. Then she reads the rest, the relationship timeline, the 2 years in Cebu before Camille left, the gradual dissolution over distance, the final call when Camille ended it. She reads the description of the folder on Marco's hard drive. She reads the part where Cabral asked Marco directly, "She called you 16 months ago and asked you to delete the video, and you told her you had, and you had not." Marco's response in the transcript, I know I said that." Layla marks this passage separately from the other 3. She writes beside it, "He heard her ask. He said yes. He kept it anyway." This is the detail she returns to most often in the days that follow, because it contains the specific nature of Marco Villanueva's crime in a single exchange. He was not a man who stumbled onto a way to hurt someone. He was a man who held a weapon for 16 months and waited for the right moment to use it. And when Camille dela Cruz found happiness with someone else, he decided the moment had arrived. Cabral's investigation into Marco's timeline in the weeks before the wedding provides additional texture. Marco had followed Camille's Instagram with a secondary account for the better part of a year, a profile with no photograph, no posts, no followers, created specifically to observe without being visible. He watched the engagement announcement. He watched the wedding countdown posts. He watched the photographs of venue preparation and dress fittings that Camille's colleagues shared. He purchased the prepaid SIM card 7 days before the wedding from a small electronics shop in Cebu City. The shopkeeper remembers him because he paid cash and asked specifically for a card that could send international messages. He tested the number 48 hours before the wedding. sending a blank message to confirm functionality. He deleted the test from his phone records but not from the SIM card itself, which Cabral recovers intact. The blank message was sent at 3 a.m. He was awake at 3 a.m. 2 days before the wedding, testing his delivery mechanism. This is not a man who acted in a moment of broken-hearted impulse. This is a man who planned and prepared and waited, and chose the exact moment with the deliberateness of someone who understood what he was deploying and wanted it to land with maximum precision. The formal extradition request for Marco Villanueva is filed through the Interpol liaison desk on day 3 and expedited through the bilateral legal assistance agreement between the Philippines and UAE. Cabral places Marco in preventive detention at the Manila City Jail pending extradition proceedings. Marco does not contest the detention. He does not contact a lawyer for the first 48 hours. He sits in the cell and, according to Cabral's notes, does not speak to anyone and does not eat the first day's meals and cries at intervals throughout the night with the consistency of someone who has understood, finally and completely, the full weight of what they have done and finds that understanding entirely unmanageable. Layla flies to Cebu City on day 5. She has requested this trip herself. It is not strictly necessary. Cabral's team has handled everything competently, and the evidence chain is solid without her presence. She goes because she needs to see one specific thing, and because she believes, in the same way she believes the dead cannot speak without someone to speak for them, that the people who loved the dead deserve to be looked at directly by the person responsible for their case. The Dela Cruz family home is a modest concrete structure in Barangay Guadalupe, 2 blocks from the school where Camille studied for her nursing board exams. Rosa Dela Cruz is 52 years old. She has not slept in 4 days. She answers the door in house slippers and a faded duster, and she looks at Layla's identification for a long moment before she steps aside to let her in. The living room contains a plastic table, 4 chairs, a small television, and on the wall above the door, a framed copy of Camille's nursing board exam results. Not the certificate, the actual results sheet, with the scores printed in columns and Camille's name at the top. Rosa sits across from Layla at the plastic table. She folds her hands. She asks one question before Layla can begin. Did she suffer? Layla has prepared for this question. She has thought about how to answer it in a way that is both honest and humane. She says, she was brave until the very end. She fought. She did not accept it. Rosa Dela Cruz closes her eyes for a moment. Then she opens them. She says, she was always like that. From when she was small. She never accepted things she thought were wrong. Cost her sometimes. But she was always like that. Nico is at school when Layla visits. Rosa tells Layla he knows his sister is gone. They told him on the morning of day 2, when it became clear this would be in the news and they could not protect him from it. He has not cried in front of anyone. He went to school on day 3. His teacher called Rosa on day 4 to say that Nico had sat through every class and completed every assignment and had not spoken voluntarily to any of his classmates. That he had eaten his lunch alone. That when the teacher had approached him at the end of the day and asked if he was all right, he had looked at her with the particular expression of a 14-year-old who has learned something about the world that 14-year-olds should not know yet, and he had said, "I'm fine, Pa. Thank you, Pa." And he had picked up his bag and walked home. Layla sits with this information in the taxi back to the airport. She looks out the window at Cebu City going about its business, jeepneys and motorbikes and vendors and ordinary afternoon light on ordinary streets. And she thinks about a boy who answers the phone on the second ring and eats lunch alone now and goes to school because his sister believed in school, because his sister worked night shifts at a call center to pay for nursing school and sent $800 home every month to pay for his, and she thinks about what it means that his tuition for the next 2 years is paid from transfers that are now sitting in an account that will never receive another deposit. Then she thinks about something else. She takes out her phone. She makes a call to the Filipino Migrant Workers Advocacy Organization that has been in contact with the CID office since the story broke in the media. She asks them a question. They give her an answer. She thanks them. She hangs up. She looks back out the window. She has one more thing to do before the trial. On the morning of day 7, Layla Noor submits her formal case summary to the prosecution office. It is 47 pages long. It is meticulous and evidenced and structured with the precision of someone who has been building cases for 14 years and understands that the strength of a prosecution is entirely dependent on the quality of its foundation. On page 44, in the section designated for investigative observations, she includes a paragraph that is not required by the reporting guidelines and that her supervisor will later note in a margin comment is unusual for a formal case document. He will not ask her to remove it. The paragraph reads, Camille dela Cruz had a past. She was in a relationship before she met Sheikh al-Rashidi. She made a private decision she was not proud of and asked for it to be erased and moved forward. She built something genuine. She was not deceptive by nature. Her employment record, her financial record, and every account provided by people who knew her indicate a person of exceptional integrity who carried significant responsibility without complaint for 3 years. She did not owe any man a complete accounting of her private life before she knew him. The video that was sent to Sheikh al-Rashidi on the night of his wedding was not evidence of wrongdoing. It was evidence of a past. It was weaponized by a man who called the act love. It was used by a man who called his response honor. Camille dela Cruz is dead because 2 men decided her history belonged to them. The record should be clear on this point. It did not. The paragraph is quoted in full in 3 separate news reports the following week. It is read into the trial record by the prosecutor on the opening day. It is the sentence the jury will cite in their post-verdict interviews as the moment they understood what this case was actually about. The trial of Sheikh Faris al-Rashidi opens in Dubai Criminal Court on a Monday morning in the kind of February that Dubai produces occasionally. Cool air, pale sky, the city looking briefly like a place that belongs to the ground beneath it rather than the ambition above it. The courthouse is a modern building on the edge of the financial district. Outside, a small group of Filipino migrant worker advocates holds a silent vigil. They have been there every morning since the trial date was announced. They hold photographs, not of Camille specifically, of many women, many faces, a catalog of names that stretches back further than this case and will stretch forward further still. A security officer stands near them. He does not ask them to move. They stand in the cool February morning and they hold their photographs and they do not speak. Prosecutor Hannah Al-Suwaidi is 44 years old. She has prosecuted 23 homicide cases in Dubai Criminal Court. She is known for 2 things: the completeness of her preparation and the specific quality of her closing arguments, which proceed without notes and without theatrical gesture, and with the kind of absolute clarity that comes from a person who has spent weeks understanding a case at the level of its bones. She wears the same navy abaya every day of the trial. She believes courtrooms require consistency. She opens the prosecution's case on day 1 with Layla Noor's paragraph from the case summary, read in full, standing without notes at the center of the floor. There are 3 defendants. The trial has been structured to address them in sequence, with Tariq al-Rashidi and Marco Villanueva tried as co-defendants in the conspiracy and obstruction charges before the court moves to Faris al-Rashidi's primary murder charge. This structure is deliberate. The prosecution wants the full architecture of what happened on that wedding night to be completely understood by the time Faris takes the stand. Tariq al-Rashidi's defense presents a single argument across 2 days: that he acted from family loyalty in a moment of crisis, without premeditation, out of love for his brother and a genuine belief that his brother was in shock and not fully accountable for what had occurred. The defense attorney is skilled and the argument is emotionally coherent. Tariq himself presents well, composed, genuinely sorrowful in a way that appears authentic, a man who has clearly spent the months since his arrest understanding the full weight of what he participated in. His hands are folded on the table throughout his testimony. He does not look at Faris, who sits across the courtroom. Judge Fatima Al-Hamadi, presiding, is 58 years old and has sat on the bench of Dubai Criminal Court for 19 years. She listens to Tariq's defense in its entirety without visible expression. Then she asks one question from the bench directly, which she is permitted to do under UAE judicial procedure. She asks, "When you arrived at the suite at 11:52 p.m. and you saw your brother and you saw his wife, did you at any point consider calling emergency services?" Tariq is silent for a moment. Then he says, "No." Judge Al-Hamadi writes something in her notes. She does not ask a second question. Tariq al-Rashidi is sentenced to 9 years in Dubai Central Prison for obstruction of justice, tampering with a crime scene, and accessory after the fact to first-degree murder. He is also fined the maximum statutory amount. The sentence is read on a Thursday afternoon. Tariq closes his eyes when he hears it. He opens them. He still does not look at Ferris. Marco Villanueva's extradition from the Philippines is completed without contest in the third week of proceedings. He enters the court on the first day of his testimony looking precisely like what he is. A 29-year-old man who has spent 3 months in detention understanding, with increasing and unrelenting clarity, the chain of causation between a decision he made at 2:47 a.m. and a woman who is buried in Cebu City. He is thin. He has the particular quality of a person who has stopped arguing with themselves and arrived, finally, at something that resembles clarity even though what it actually is devastation. His defense argues diminished emotional capacity, that he acted from genuine grief and genuine love, that the concept of revenge as a legal mitigating factor deserves consideration, that he could not have predicted the outcome of sending the video. This last argument is the one the prosecution dismantles most efficiently. Hannah Al-Suwaidi takes Marco through his timeline point by point. The secondary Instagram account created specifically to observe without being seen. The prepaid SIM purchased with cash 7 days before the wedding. The test message sent at 3 a.m. 2 days prior. The deliberate selection of the wedding night over any other possible moment in the preceding 3 weeks during which he possessed both the video and the phone number. She asks him, standing 3 feet from the witness stand, without raising her voice. You had this number for 3 weeks. You chose not to send it until the wedding night. Why? Marco says, I wanted her to feel what I felt when she chose him. Al-Suwaidi says, and what did you think he would do when he received it? Marco says, I didn't know. She says, you chose a stranger to deliver your revenge to a woman you say you loved. You knew nothing about his temperament, his history, his capacity for violence. You simply sent it and waited. Marco is quiet. She says, that is not love. That is the use of someone you once loved as an instrument of your own grievance. The courtroom is completely silent. Marco Villanueva is sentenced to 14 years in Dubai Central Prison for conspiracy in second-degree murder, criminal harassment, and willful transmission of material with intent to cause harm resulting in death. Additional charges have been filed through the Philippine National Bureau of Investigation under the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act and will be processed upon completion of his UAE sentence. He is 29 years old. He will be 43 at minimum before he is released from UAE custody. He shows no reaction when the sentence is read. He is taken from the courtroom. He does not look back. The trial of Sheikh Faris al-Rashidi on the primary charge of first-degree murder begins on a Wednesday and spans 4 days of testimony. The defense mounts a serious case. Senior advocate Rashid Khalfan, one of the most respected criminal defense attorneys in the UAE, presents a 3-part argument. Extreme emotional provocation as a mitigating factor, the cultural and psychological context of perceived honor violation, and the absence of premeditation. He calls 2 expert witnesses, a forensic psychiatrist who testifies about the neurological effects of acute betrayal on decision-making, and a character witness who speaks to Faris's conduct across 38 years of life before this night. The testimony is credible and the argument is constructed with genuine legal skill. Judge Al-Hamadi listens to all of it without expression. Hannah Al-Suwaidi's cross-examination of the psychiatric expert takes 40 minutes and produces one exchange that the trial reports will return to repeatedly in their analysis. She asks, in your professional assessment, was Sheikh al-Rashidi in a state of complete psychological incapacity at the time of the offense? The expert says, not complete, no. He understood his actions. She says, he had 43 minutes between receiving the video and Camille dela Cruz's death. He watched the video, he searched the name Marco Villanueva on Instagram, he reviewed the profile, he formed conclusions, and then he confronted his wife. All of this required sequential cognitive function. The expert agrees. She says, and in those 43 minutes he did not call police. He did not call his lawyer. He did not leave the suite. He did not do anything except build a case in his own mind and then act on it. The expert says, that is accurate. She says, then this was not incapacity. This was a choice made by a man in full cognitive function who decided that what he felt justified what he did. She returns to her table. Faris al-Rashidi testifies for 3 hours on the final day of his portion of the trial. He is contained and coherent and, in the particular way of people who have had months to construct their understanding of what they did, he is genuinely remorseful in a way that is neither performed nor simple. He says, "I know what I did. I know it was wrong. I know she was not guilty of what I believed she was guilty of in that moment. I know that what I felt does not justify what I did." He says, "There is not a day since that night that I have not understood this." Judge Al-Hamadi asks him, from the bench, the same question she asked Tariq. She asks, "In the 43 minutes between receiving the video and your wife's death, at what point did you consider that you might be wrong about what you were seeing?" Faris is quiet for a very long time. Then he says, "I didn't." She writes in her notebook, "The verdict is delivered on a Friday morning. First-degree murder. Confirmed. Sentencing is delivered in the same session. Judge Al-Hamadi has prepared it in advance, which is permissible under UAE procedure when the evidence is unambiguous. Life imprisonment. No possibility of parole consideration for a minimum of 25 years. He is 38 years old. He will be 63 at the earliest point at which his case can be reviewed. His family, seated in the gallery, is completely still when the sentence is read. His mother closes her eyes. His brother Zayed, the eldest, the heir, puts his hand over his face. Tariq is not in the gallery. Tariq is already in Dubai Central Prison. Faris is taken from the courtroom without incident. He does not speak. At the door he pauses for one moment. He turns and looks at the gallery, not at his family. At a point somewhere past them, somewhere that might be the back wall or might be something only he can see. Then the door closes. Now, where everyone is, Layla Noor is back at work the following Monday. She has a new case, a different room, a different body, a different set of things that don't add up. She keeps her father's photograph inside her badge holder. She measures spaces twice before she draws conclusions. The Camille dela Cruz case is cited in a formal training module issued to all Dubai CID homicide investigators in the months that follow. Specifically the section on staged suicide differentiation, built substantially from Hassan Samir's initial observations and Layla's scene analysis. She was asked to consult on the module. She did. She was asked to speak at its launch event. She declined. She said, "I did my job." Hassan Samir is promoted to Detective Second Class in November. He frames the commendation letter. He hangs it beside a photograph of his daughter, who is 4 years old and likes to sit on his shoulders when they go to the market on Saturday mornings and point at things she wants to know the names of. He teaches her the names of everything she points at. He believes this is important. Dr. Al-Marzuki presents his biomechanical analysis at 2 international forensic medicine conferences in the year following the trial. His paper on distinguishing antemortem strangulation from postmortem impact trauma in apparent fall cases is accepted for publication in a peer-reviewed forensic pathology journal. It is downloaded 4,200 times in its first 3 months. It is included on the reading list of forensic medicine programs in 4 countries. He does not attend the conferences personally. He sends a colleague to present. He is too busy. There are always more cases. Ernesto Cabral in Manila receives a commendation from the Philippine National Bureau of Investigation for his handling of the Villanueva extradition and the completeness of his interview documentation. He takes his family to the beach that weekend for the first time in 2 years. He thinks about the case once on the second day, sitting in a beach chair watching his children in the water. Then he puts it down. He has learned, over 20 years of this work, that the ones you carry too long will hollow you out. He puts it down. He watches his children. The Filipino migrant workers advocacy group that stood outside the courthouse every morning of the trial formalizes its campaign in the months after sentencing, lobbying for stronger consular protection protocols for overseas Filipino workers in the Gulf states, for clearer legal pathways for workers who find themselves in dangerous situations, for an expansion of the UAE-Philippines bilateral assistance agreement to include faster victim identification procedures. They cite Camille dela Cruz's case specifically in their submission to the Philippine Senate Committee on Overseas Workers' Welfare. The submission is accepted. The committee opens an inquiry. Nico Dela Cruz receives a full scholarship from the same advocacy group, effective the academic year following his sister's death. The scholarship covers his secondary school fees through graduation and includes a conditional university scholarship upon completion of secondary studies. It is named the Camille Dela Cruz Scholarship for Overseas Workers' Dependents. Nico is the first recipient. He is 14 years old. He still answers the phone on the second ring. He no longer has anyone who calls every Friday at 8:30. But he answers quickly, always, as if he is still practicing. Camille Dela Cruz is buried in the municipal cemetery in Barangay Guadalupe, Cebu City, 2 blocks from the school where she worked night shifts to pay for her education. Her mother Rosa visits on the first of every month and plants sampaguita flowers at the base of the headstone, the same flowers Camille carried in her wedding bouquet, chosen because they smell like home. The headstone is simple: name, dates, and below them 4 words her mother chose. She held us up. A rosary hangs on the frame of Camille's graduation photograph above the dining table in the Dela Cruz family home. White beads, silver crucifix, small enough to fit in a closed fist. It was the one she carried to Dubai 3 years ago. It was recovered from the suite at the Burj Al Arab, catalogued as evidence, held for the duration of the trial. The Dela Cruz family requested its return through the Philippine consulate. 3 consular letters, 11 months, a formal petition. The evidence clerk in Dubai Criminal Court signed the release form on a Tuesday afternoon in February. The package arrived in Cebu City the following week. Rosa Dela Cruz opened it at the kitchen table. She did not speak for a long time. Then she stood. She walked to the shelf. She placed the rosary around the frame of the photograph, the graduation photograph, the white uniform, the day Camille passed her board exams and became the person she had worked every night shift and early morning and borrowed money year of her young life to become. The rosary hangs there now. The sampaguita blooms on the first of every month. Camille Dela Cruz was 26 years old. She was a pediatric nurse who remembered every child's name. She was a daughter who held a family together from 5,000 kilometers away. She was a sister who called every Friday without fail because a 14-year-old boy lit up when he saw her face on the screen. She had a past. It belonged to her. 2 men decided otherwise, one in a dormitory in Cebu City with a hard drive and a grievance, one in a hotel suite with a phone in his hand and 43 minutes to make a different choice. Both of them are in prison. Both of them will think about her for the rest of their lives. She will not think about either of them. She is beyond all of it now. In a school 2 blocks from where she is buried, a boy is doing his homework. He is doing it carefully and completely, the way she taught him to, because she told him once that education was the one thing no one could ever take from you. He believes her. He has good reason to. She proved it with every night shift and every wire transfer and every Friday call for 3 years. She proved it with her whole life. Some things outlast everything. The sampaguita grows. The rosary hangs on the wall. The boy does his homework in the school his sister paid for, and the city goes about its business 2 blocks away, and the world continues its ordinary motion in all directions at once. Indifferent to most things, as the world always is, but carrying this one forward nonetheless, in the scholarship that bears her name and the forensic paper that will train the next generation of pathologists to see what others miss, and the quiet vigil of women standing outside a courthouse in the February morning holding photographs. That is the truth. That is the story. That is what happened on a wedding night in Dubai when a phone buzzed on a white duvet and nobody was in the room yet to read it. And a woman in an ivory dress stood outside in the warm evening holding flowers that smelled like home and had absolutely no idea